Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, can you please tell me where and what time you're watching? Thanks.
The Port of Brunswick. Georgia doesn't show up on any tourist maps. It's where I've worked for the past 15 years as Dean Mercer, now a logistics coordinator for Deepwater Shipping, a private contractor that handles specialized cargo for government agencies. My team includes 4 others. Marcus Dawkins, a former Marine with forearms like tree trunks. Eliza Reeves, our paperwork wizard. Tommy Chin, our tech specialist. And Bo Wilson, the eager new guy who asks far too many questions. I was handed the rulebook on my first day. Standard safety protocols. Nothing unusual. That is, until I hit page 19. Special handling procedures for designated cargo. After what happened to Riley Jenkins last year, when he ignored Rule 16, none of us question those rules anymore. These are the ones that matter most. Rule 1. No cargo handling for designated containers between 3:27 a.m. and 4:11 a.m. Rule 2. If you hear whistling from a container, tag it blue and contact your supervisor. Rule 3. Some containers feel heavier than their manifest weight. Use standard procedures regardless. Rule 4. Containers with both a yellow circle and red triangle must never be stored next to those with black squares. Rule 5. Some containers require verbal confirmation codes before handling. I've followed these rules religiously for 4 years, no matter how strange they seemed. But last Tuesday, something happened that made me realize these aren't just arbitrary protocols. They're warnings, safeguards against whatever's sealed inside those containers. This is the story of what happened when one rule was broken, and why I now sleep with the lights on, wondering if whatever escaped is still out there, looking for me. Tuesday at the Port of Brunswick started beneath a dull grey sky, thick with the promise of afternoon rain. I arrived at 5:15 a.m, coffee in hand, the taste of last night's bourbon still lingering. Hank, the security guard, greeted me with troubling news. A Blackwater shipment was inbound. 6 containers, priority clearance, and they were sending a babysitter. My stomach tightened. Blackwater is our code for high security government cargo. Those shipments were rare. A federal observer, even rarer. Inside the admin building, Eliza was already at her desk. Morning, boss. The manifest for today's Blackwater shipment just came through. They're sending Dr. Avery to supervise. I groaned. Aaron Abernathy, a Department of Energy scientist, had overseen 2 previous shipments, always hovering behind my team like an anxious shadow. Tommy called in sick, she continued. I've got Bo filling in. I frowned. Bo doesn't have clearance for Blackwater protocols. He does now, she said, handing me a Department of Homeland Security form, emergency clearance authorization, signed by Director Hayes himself. That was strange. Emergency clearances usually took 72 hours. Why would the head of DHS's Special Materials Division personally authorize a junior dock worker? I found Marcus inspecting our gear. Morning, Deck. Equipment's fine, but forecast says lightning this afternoon. You know how Blackwater gets about moving cargo during storms. Rule number 12 strictly prohibits handling designated containers during thunderstorms. I headed to Warehouse C, where Bo was setting up scanning equipment. For someone only 3 months on the job, he worked with unsettling confidence. Where'd you get the technical specs? I asked, noticing he was using classified documentation. Digital library, sir. Tommy showed me how to access it. A lie. Tommy didn't have the authority to grant access to classified materials. My radio crackled. Sir? Eliza's tense voice came through. The Blackwater shipment's been moved up, arriving in 30 minutes. Dr. Abernathy's already here. Back at admin, I found Eliza with Abernathy. He seemed off, rigid, posture, no nervous energy, wearing an ill-fitting dark suit instead of his usual khakis. In my office, he dropped a bombshell. The containers are classified obsidian black, he said flatly. Rule number 8 has been temporarily suspended. I froze. Rule 8 required full scanning of all designated containers, no exceptions. That's not possible, I protested. The authorization is here, he replied, showing me signatures from both the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of Defense. As he left, I noticed two oddities: bluish discoloration at his wrists and a strange device clipped to his belt. Something was definitely wrong, but my clearance didn't allow for questions. Whatever was coming, my job was to follow protocol, even if the protocol itself had changed. The cargo vessel Bellon arrived at 6:32 a.m., completely matte black with minimal markings. No shipping company logo, just a small American flag and a registration number. That ain't no regular transport, Marcus whispered, as 6 individuals in tactical gear disembarked and took positions around the gangway. Dr. Abbery introduced me to their leader, Agent Blackwood, who gave firm instructions. Your team's sole responsibility is transport to storage. My people handle security. When I asked about handling precautions, Blackwood laid out specifics. The containers were reinforced with lead and graphene composite. Each weighed 7.2 tons, and the payload had to remain centered. Tilt tolerance under 3 degrees. Temperature had to be maintained between 50 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Containers 1 through 5 had to stay at least 30 feet away from Container 6. What's in Container 6? I asked. Classified, Abbery interjected. The first container emerged, standard-sized, matte black, labelled only OB731A1. As it settled onto our transport, I noticed a faint humming sound coming from within. You hear that? I murmured to Marcus. Sounds like running equipment. He nodded. Power source, maybe. One by one, the first 5 containers were transferred without incident. Then came Container 6, OB731B1, visibly different, with extra external bracing, unfamiliar hazard symbols, and monitoring equipment. Most disturbing was the condensation forming on its surface. The metal was heating up. The thermal signatures all wrong, Bo whispered beside me. One of Blackwood's men quickly ordered us back to the minimum 30-foot clearance line. As the container was being lowered, the humming sound shifted pitch, becoming erratic. One of the sensors began flashing red. Containment fluctuation, one of Blackwood's team yelled. Pressure spike in the primary chamber. Abbery rushed forward with a handheld device. Get it on the ground, now! The container was about 10 feet above the transport when a corner seam split open with a metallic groan. What escaped wasn't gas or liquid, but a rippling distortion in the air that moved with intent. Breach! We have a containment breach, Blackwood shouted into his communicator. Full lockdown of Dock 27. Alarms blared as emergency doors sealed automatically. Blackwood's team donned specialized masks. What the hell is going on? Marcus demanded. Abbery handed us similar. Masks. Put this on. Get your team to the safe room in the administrative building, now. More distortion seeped from the container, forming an undulating cloud that hovered like a predator deciding where to strike. I radioed Eliza to initiate emergency protocol Sierra, then sent Marcus and Bo to the safe room. As I watched Blackwood's team try to seal the crack, a growing horror settled in. There was nothing in the rulebook about how to handle this. 6 hours after the breach, Dock 27 was unrecognizable. Military-grade barriers now surrounded the facility, manned by personnel in advanced hazmat suits. Mobile laboratories and command centers had been flown in by helicopter. I sat in my office, now repurposed as an interview room, where a woman introduced herself as Dr. Elise Winters. She wore a dark suit with a silver geometric pin, identical to one of the symbols on Container 6. Your colleagues are safe and being processed according to exposure protocols, she said calmly. I asked about my team. Monsieur Reeves is in a sealed environment. Mr. Dawkins and Mr. Wilson are under observation. Under observation? I asked sharply. Were they exposed? Initial assessments indicate Mr. Wilson may have had secondary contact with the material, she replied clinically. Dr. Winters removed a syringe filled with amber liquid from a secure container. I need to administer this, prophylactic treatment for potential low-level exposure. I refused until she explained what we were dealing with. The material is designated XM91, she finally disclosed. It's transformative matter that restructures atomic bonds, alters molecular configurations, rewrites DNA. It was discovered in the Mariana Trench 14 months ago. Is it alive? I asked, recalling the way it moved with deliberate intent. Debatable. It exhibits both directed intelligence and environmental response algorithms. Full exposure results in comprehensive cellular reconstruction, beginning with the dermis. The process is painful, irreversible, and fatal in 93% of cases. And the other 7%, I asked. They undergo a more complete transformation. Their physical forms stabilize, but cognitive patterns become altered. They become extensions of the material itself. I mentioned Abernathy's strange blue wrist markings, which visibly alarmed her. She left abruptly to make an urgent call, accidentally leaving her tablet behind. On the screen was security footage of Beau in a medical room, his bare back covered in intricate blue-green patterns that pulsed with subtle movement. When she returned, with armed guards, her calm demeanor was gone, replaced by urgency. Dr. Abery was not authorized personnel, she said sharply. The real Dr. Abernathy was found dead this morning, 3 hours after your Abernathy delivered those containers. He was a compromised agent who orchestrated this entire breach. I was escorted immediately for extensive medical screening. Hours of invasive procedures followed. Scans, blood draws, tissue samples, while my questions about Marcus and Beau went mostly unanswered. Eventually, I was given scrubs and placed in a temporary containment dormitory, effectively a prison cell with humming white walls embedded with strange tech. Sleep brought nightmares, blue patterns crawling across my skin, containers whispering in languages I almost understood. Mid-morning, Dr. Winters returned, this time with General Lawrence. Harding, a stern-faced military man with tired, heavy eyes. He needed details about my interactions with Abery and Beau. I described everything. Abernathy's changed demeanor, the rushed protocols, Beau's unusual knowledge and technical readiness. Wilson has only been employed for 3 months, Harding noted. His credentials were expertly falsified, good enough for routine checks, but they don't hold under scrutiny. We believe both individuals are part of the same phenomenon, Dr. Winters added. The entity impersonating Abery shows signs of late-stage integration, approximately 6 months post-exposure. Wilson exhibits early-stage changes, suggesting a more recent exposure. Harding slid a tablet across the table. On it, a map filled, with red dots scattered across North America and Europe. Each marker represents a confirmed infiltration event over the past 8 months. Medical facilities, military installations, transportation hubs. Why Brunswick? I asked. Proximity, Winters replied, zooming in to show a location 40 miles inland. The Savannah River Nuclear Facility, one of the largest repositories of weapons-grade plutonium in the eastern United States. You think they're trying to build a nuclear weapon? Worse, Harding said grimly. We believe they're attempting to expose radioactive materials to XM91, creating a self-propagating chain reaction that could exponentially enhance its transformative capabilities. They led me to an observation room containing a transparent cube. Inside sat Beau, or what remained of him. His skin was translucent, revealing geometric blue-green patterns pulsing underneath. His violet eyes swirled like oil on water. "Hello, Dean," he greeted me, voice unnervingly normal despite his transformed appearance. "They finally let you come see me. Were you ever really Beau Wilson's son?" I asked through the intercom. He laughed, a sound like wind chimes made of glass. "I am Beau Wilson, or what Beau Wilson was always meant to become. I was exposed 67 days ago during a mining operation in Thea. What are you planning with the containers? Who says the breach wasn't exactly what was supposed to happen?" His smile widened. "The containers were just the delivery mechanism. You wanted XM91 released?" I realized. "Brunswick's port connects to 16 separate watershed systems," Beau explained. tracing complex patterns on the wall with elongated, from fingers to aquifers, rivers, municipal supplies, and eventually to the cooling systems of the Savannah River nuclear facility. Everything was connected. Suddenly, alarms blared. "Containment breach in Section 7, announced an automated voice. "All personnel, initiate lockdown protocol immediately." Bose's expression shifted into one of calm satisfaction. "Right on schedule. Water remembers, Dean, and what it remembers, it shares." General Harding's radio crackled with panic. "Sir, the water main under the east wing is ruptured. We've got flooding in the lower levels, and something's happening to the containment teams. They're changing." "Evacuate to secure levels," urged Dr. Winters, grabbing my arm. Through the facility windows, I saw the rising water, not clear but murky and faintly glowing with swirling blue-green threads. The quarantine protocols had been compromised. Harding barked into his radio. "Initiate Omega contingency." Dr. Winters turned pale. "Sir, there are still over 200 personnel on site." "I know what it means, Doctor," Harding replied grimly. "But if XM91 reaches the groundwater, we're looking at regional contamination." We reached a secure elevator that required Harding's handprint and a complex code. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of strange luminescent patterns forming on the corridor walls, as if the building itself was becoming infected. "Where are we going?" I demanded as we descended. "Sub-basement 3, the Omega facility." "What about everyone else? Marcus, Eliza?" "If we can contain this, there won't be a need for the Omega protocol," Harding said flatly. "What exactly is this Omega protocol?" I pressed. "Thermographic purification," Dr. Winters explained quietly. "The entire facility is rigged with incendiary systems, temperatures over 3,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to break down XM91's molecular structure. You're going to incinerate the entire facility, with everyone inside." The command center screens showed the infection spreading rapidly. Some personnel were already transforming, their skin developing geometric patterns, their movements becoming increasingly unnatural. 17 minutes before critical spread parameters, a technician announced. I spotted Eliza on a security feed, unharmed but trapped in an isolation room. Another screen showed Marcus strapped to a medical bed, convulsing as blue-green. Patterns spread across his body. A painful, incompatible transformation, tearing him apart. "Get Marcus and Eliza out of there," I demanded. "Marcus is beyond help," Harding replied grimly. "Evacuation teams are en route to Eliza's location." I watched helplessly as contaminated water reached Eliza's room, seeping under the door. The security officer sent to evacuate her was immediately affected, the transformation spreading rapidly up his legs. "All evacuation teams are already deployed or compromised," a staff member reported. "Nearest available personnel are at least 6 minutes out." "She doesn't have 6 minutes," Dr. Winters said softly. 9 minutes to Omega threshold, intoned the monitoring system. We watched Eliza trapped in her quarantine room. The transformed security officer moved with inhuman grace, leaping onto the ceiling and removing the ventilation grate Eliza had been trying to reach. Instead of attacking, he offered his elongated hand, as if to help. Eliza recoiled in terror. "There has to be something we can do," I pleaded. "Initiate emergency decontamination sequence for her room," Dr. Winters suggested. "It won't stop the transformation in progress, but it might neutralize the active material." On. The monitor, warning lights flashed. The transformed officer moved with blinding speed to the control panel, his fingers interfacing directly with the electronics. "He's attempting to override the decontamination sequence," a technician reported. Suddenly, every screen in the command center briefly displayed the same geometric pattern B had drawn on his cell wall. "System-wide intrusion attempt," someone shouted. "Something is trying to access our command protocols directly." 7 minutes to Omega threshold. On Eliza's screen, the transformed officer placed both palms against the solid concrete wall. The wall began to ripple and distort, flowing like liquid to form a perfectly circular doorway leading into an empty corridor. The The transformed officer gestured toward the opening. Escape. After a moment's hesitation, Eliza made her decision. She leapt across the flooded floor toward the doorway, carefully avoiding both the contaminated water and the transformed figure. "Track her on her," Harding ordered. "Where does that corridor lead?" "Service Tunnel 3B, someone replied. "If she continues east, she could reach emergency exit 7. It's still operational. 5 minutes to Omega threshold." The main screen now showed Bose's cell dissolving, bright, blinding patterns pulsing beneath his skin, forming complex rhythms that match the frequencies of the deteriorating containment field. "He's resonating with the patterns spreading through the facility," Dr. Winters explained, creating a feedback loop, amplifying the transformative properties. "Cut the feed," Harding snapped. "Focus on evacuation tracking. We've lost contact with 3 of the 5 emergency evacuation points," a staffer reported. 47 personnel remain unaccounted for." I spotted Eliza on a security feed, sprinting toward an emergency exit, but a tendril of contaminated water was creeping through a ceiling vent ahead, forming a glowing puddle directly in her path. "She doesn't see it," I said, panicked. "Can't you warn her?" "The PA system in that section's offline." 3 minutes to Omega. Threshold! Suddenly, emergency lights flickered on in Eliza's corridor, but not the standard red. These pulsed in a blue-green hue, matching the infected areas of the facility. She stopped, cautiously peered around the corner, and finally spotted the danger. "The transformed officer is helping her," Dr. Winters murmured, stunned. Eliza located a maintenance access panel and slipped inside a narrow utility shaft, a tunnel that might lead outside the compound. 2 minutes to Omega threshold. Final authorization required. General Harding's face turned to stone. "Begin final evacuation of command staff. All personnel not essential to Omega protocol execution proceed immediately to secure transport." "Sir," a lieutenant protested, "there are still people unaccounted for." "Anyone still in there is already lost," Harding said coldly. "Our duty now is to ensure this doesn't spread beyond these walls." As I was led toward the evacuation elevator, I turned for one last look at the security feeds. On one screen, Bose calmly walked through the flooded corridors. On another, transformed personnel moved with unsettling coordination in the main lab. On a third, just before the elevator doors closed, an external camera showed Eliza crawling out of a ventilation duct beyond the perimeter. She had made it, but faint blue-green lines marked her forearms, catching the sunlight with an unnatural shimmer. 3 weeks later, I sat inside a sterile room at a Department of Defense observation facility in Northern Virginia. My containment suite was comfortable enough: bedroom, bathroom, a small living space, but the reinforced door and constant surveillance made it clear I was still a prisoner. The tests continued daily: blood draws, brain scans, psychological evaluations, checking for any sign that XM91 had affected me. So far, nothing. The neural stabilizer they gave me seemed to be working. Dr. Winters entered, holding a tablet. Her once pristine appearance had faded. Dark circles under her eyes, hair carelessly tied back, clothes wrinkled. "How are you feeling today, Mr. Mercer?" "Same as yesterday." "When can I leave?" She set the tablet down. "That's actually why I'm here. You've been cleared for conditional release." My heart leapt. "And the conditions?" "Routine medical check-ins, restricted travel, and complete confidentiality. Speak a word about Brunswick, and recontainment will be immediate." "What happened to the facility?" I asked. "Officially, a hazardous materials accident required controlled demolition." She paused. "Unofficially, Omega Protocol was completely successful. No trace of XM91 remains within the containment zone." "And Marcus?" "I'm sorry," she said gently. "He didn't survive." Grief washed over me all over. Again. Marcus, his booming laugh, his terrible dad jokes, gone. "What about Eliza? Did she make it?" Dr. Winters' expression tightened. "Miss Reeves was tracked to Savannah, where she boarded a bus to Atlanta. Then she vanished. Facial recognition systems haven't been able to locate her, Dr. Winters said. Because she's changed, I whispered. We believe so. The transformation would have progressed rapidly. She handed me a folder. These are your release papers. A car will take you to temporary housing in Richmond tomorrow. After she left, I opened the nightstand drawer, where I kept the only personal item they'd returned to me, the photo of my father on the Brunswick docks. Behind it, I'd hidden the scrap of paper Eliza had somehow smuggled to me during my second week here. The note contained just an address in Portland, Oregon, and 7 words. The pattern spreads. Choose transformation. Find me. Below, it was a small blue-green mark, the start of a geometric pattern that seemed to shimmer when viewed from certain angles. As I packed my meager belongings, I thought about the choice in front of me: return to a life under constant surveillance, or follow the address to discover what Eliza had become, and maybe what I might become too. In the bathroom mirror, I studied my reflection carefully. For a moment, in the fluorescent light, I thought I saw a faint blue sheen beneath the skin of my forearm. Just a trick of the light. Probably. But sometimes, late at night, I still heard the humming from those containers in my dreams. And sometimes, I caught myself sketching geometric patterns I didn't recognize, but somehow understood. Rule number 27. If you begin to see patterns where none should exist, report immediately for psychological evaluation. But some rules, I was beginning to realize, were meant to be broken. The port of Bruns has reopened under new management. Deepwater shipping no longer exists in any public record. The rulebook I once followed has been replaced, now 36 pages long. The strangeness continues. Water levels in the Savannah River have been unusually high this season. People in 3 counties report seeing strange lights in the night sky. And sometimes if you stand at the edge of Dock 27 just before dawn, you might hear a faint whistling sound coming from beneath the water's surface. The rules exist for a reason, but the pattern exists for a purpose. And as it spreads through water systems, power grids, and communication networks, that purpose is becoming clearer. Transformation isn't just inevitable, it's necessary, the next stage in our evolution. I leave this record as both a warning and an invitation. By the time you read it, I'll be in Portland, finding Eliza, embracing what comes next. Some containers aren't meant to remain sealed forever, and some rules are meant to be broken.